Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacy Sousa. My current role is currently the Quality Assurance Evaluator and the Contracting Officer Representative for the Base Infrastructure and Telecommunications contract at Tinker Air Force Base. In this role, I am responsible for assuring the quality of all of the base telecommunications to provide highly reliable quality telecommunications systems, services, and solutions. I'm also responsible for directing, developing, and implementing quality assurance policies that support contracting surveillance, perform analysis on quality information to institute appropriate corrective and preventive actions on the telecommunications contract. And as the core, I have to establish and complete files associated with overseeing the contractor's performance. I perform inspection and exception of the government's ensuring performance and delivery is in accordance with contract requirements. Some of the highlights of my experience that relate to the context of air power and national security are by providing communications and IT support for Tinker team partners, the Air Force Material Command, and the warfighter by providing full spectrum communications in support of all the global mission. I serve as both the quality assurance evaluator and the core, as I said, over the base infrastructure and telecommunications support services contract, and consistently monitor the installation, operation, and maintenance of the BITS systems contract in accordance with the statement of work and established guidelines. I've also been a part of the customer requirements team, which receives, validates, and processes over a thousand customer submitted telecommunications requirements in support of the warfighter during FY19, and personally oversaw 396 communications projects from inception through acquisition, installation, and implementation stages of the project. Part two, in what content that I thought changed my perspective about air power, I would have to say in our Foundations of Air Power 501S class, Julio Duhet was one of the first to think deeply and write cognitively about air power and its role in the war. His formula for victory in the air was command of the air, strike the strategic vital center, and take the offensive. Duhet who published The Command of Air in 1920, actually never learned to fly but became obsessed with aviation, military aviation, during a trench war stalemate back in the 1920s, and he knew then that air power would become the dominant force in future wars. His main argument was the openness of the sky and the speed that the aircraft could cross across the open skies and establish independence of surface limitations and superior speed. He wrote, because of its independence of surface limitations and its superior speed, the airplane is the offensive weapon par excellence. He believed that dominance was achieved through the power of aerial bombardment, and that this dominance would cause the Air Force, or soon to become the Air Force, to become dominant over the other services. He believed that by achieving aerial superiority, the only defense that the enemy would have against a bomber force more powerful than the enemy was being able to destroy their center of maintenance, concentration, and production of military aircraft. And what I found most compelling about Duhet's conclusion was that there was only one attitude to adopt during aerial warfare, and that was namely an intense and violent offensive, even at the risk of enduring the same from the enemy. The one and only effective method of defending one's own territory from an offensive by air is to destroy the enemy's air power with the greatest possible speed. The two most critical issues, in my opinion, that we will be facing related to air power in the context of national security warfare or joint operations is first and foremost cybersecurity. I believe that the most critical factor likely to affect future air power is cybersecurity. Even as early as 1989, former President Ronald Reagan spoke in London regarding the worldwide revolution in communications technology. Reagan believed that more than any army revolution, Reagan believed that any more than any act of diplomacy, the communications revolution would be the greatest force of advancement we would see in decades. Reagan said, "Information is the oxygen of the modern age. It seeps through the walls. Topped by barbed wire, it wafts across the electrified borders." The U.S. Air Force most recent definition of air power includes a word that I think denotes the importance of cybersecurity most accurately, which is the definition of air power, the Air Force's new definition of air power, the ability to project military power or influence through the control and exploitation of air, space, and military influence through the control and exploitation of air, space, and cyberspace to achieve strategic, operational, or tactical objectives. The most important of these words, in my opinion, is the exploitation of air. The exploitation meaning cybersecurity. Professor Mark Clodfelter, in his article Theory, Implementation, and the Future of Air Power, speaks to the role of cyber power. He says, cyber power will likely play an enormous role in future crisis. The role of cyber power, cyber power will likely play an enormous role in future crisis, but because of its unique characteristics and potential impacts, it should be thought of as a separate entity, one that would often complement air power's effects. Given cyber's distinctive nature, it would not be unusual if in the next few decades, many of the world's nations create separate cyber services. The second most critical issue, in my opinion, is funding. With issues that we've been facing lately, such as sequestration and budget cuts, this poses a great threat in our days of fiscal uncertainty. With the advancement of technology and the rising cost of that technology, we constantly face issues with funding and obtaining that funding that's going to be critical to our advancement. The advancement in funding issues and the exorbitant costs that are required to design and produce the latest in air power technology and the difficulty in procuring that funding will limit the number of nations that can acquire these type of aircrafts. And because of that reason, I feel like funding is going to be our second most critical issue in the coming decades. Thank you, and I cannot wait to interact with a lot of the students in this class, and I greatly look forward to it.